I was recently asked about Jersey City's school tax rate as published in their advertised budget for the fiscal 27 school year. The rate they published was 0.119, shown in the middle of the screen here. And the question was, how do they get to that rate when the levies as published on the top and the tax base as published on the bottom of the screen? When you take the levies and divide it by the base, you don't get to this 0.0119 rate. I've written posts that deal with this concept in previous years, and I stepped through it again, and I figured, let me just make a tutorial about it. And let me just give a little context as to why this is confusing right on its face. Slides 7 and 9 both show the tax levy amounts. You can see total tax levy here and here. This is slide number 7 in the bottom right. And then we see the same numbers repeated on slides number 9. And for both, we can see both fiscal years. Then we have to jump to slide 31 to see the tax rate and the related tax base number. Now, what can be confusing here is that we've got pieces of what are needed to put together the tax rate spread across different slides, but then there's additionally some complexity here that we have to put together, but it's all doable over the next couple of minutes. What's helpful is to put the puzzle pieces together on a spreadsheet. I like to use spreadsheet, but you can also do paper and pencil, whatever is comfortable for you. But what you ultimately want to do if you're doing any kind of math, and this is like any math teacher will say this, and I'll also say this in my accounting classroom, you want to write everything down. Label it for, what the terms mean. So for instance, you can see I'm just repeating what's in the presentation and then being very clear with the column titles as well to show the different years. This spreadsheet is available if anyone wants to download it from my site at Civic Parent. If you'd like, green is always input and then yellow is formula. That's how I make my spreadsheets. And you can see how I do the math within the spreadsheets themselves if you're curious. But what I'm going to step through next is just explaining sort of the sequential process of how this math works and why we go from one step to the next. And we're going to learn a little bit about local budgeting with respect to fiscal year versus calendar year, the idea of a little bit of complexity that can be entered in, like banked cap, and let's just get right into it. So the key thing to understand, and I'm going to take this from a property taxpayer perspective, within a single calendar year, we're actually dealing with 2 fiscal years from a school budgeting perspective. So at the heart of this, we have a fiscal year, calendar year mismatch. The fiscal year is related to the school district. Their budget maps to an academic year, which starts July 1 and extends to June 30th. Property tax bills are based on a January 1 through December 31st calendar year basis. So what we have to do here is we have to do some basic math, and I'm going to break it down into 5 moves. The first move is to add up the total levy for each fiscal year presented in the budget. Now, Jersey City is kind of like one of those advanced problems in the back of the chapter of a accounting or math textbook. There's always some complexity that is layered in that makes it just a little bit more confusing. And the banked cap shown on the screen here is that additional layer of complexity. We have something called banked cap in the last 2 fiscal years, and it's basically just additional levy funding that the Board of Education is allowed to layer into the current year budget. And the key thing to note here is that both numbers on the screen here amount to the total tax levy. Now, another thing here is that the school board did not add these numbers for us, so we just have to do the math on our own. So if we add the $545 million and the $80 million, we get to a total tax levy of $625,294,688 for fiscal year 26-27. Now we have to do the same exact thing for the prior fiscal year. That gives us a prior fiscal year levy of $534,486,132. That's math move number 2. Math move number 3 is simply to take the average of these 2 fiscal year levies, and that gives us $579,895,410. So basically, by taking the average of the 2 years, we're backing into what we consider the calendar year portion of the school tax levy across both years. Math move number 4 is to get the tax base. I separated this into its own move simply because the tax base is this important. It's a number that's published every year by the school board in its presentation, and we need it in order to compute the tax rate. The calendar year tax base number, which is an assessed value number for 2026, is $48,684,370,320. So math move number 5 is simply to divide the school tax levy into the assessed value of the tax base, and that gets us to this published calendar year school tax rate of 0.0119. So let's recap. We computed the full levy for the fiscal year being budgeted for. We then computed the full levy for the prior year fiscal budget. Then we got the average of number 1 and 2. That gets us to a calendar year school tax levy. Then we pulled the assessed value of the tax base for the current calendar year, which is published by the school board for us. And then we divided the school tax levy for the calendar year into the assessed value of the tax base for the calendar year. A couple of pointers here just to close out. We didn't learn this in school, so you're not missing anything if this is confusing or if it feels uncomfortable. This is complicated not by design, but by necessity. This is how local budgets work. We have a school system that operates on a fiscal year basis, and then we have calendar year tax bills that operate from January 1 to December 31st, and we have to reconcile it. So some of this is just basic necessity of how our different local governments marry up to our calendar year tax bills. Number 3, you don't need to understand this math to pay your tax bill, which may be why the school district doesn't go through pains or hoops to explain it to you. But you do need to know this tax math to understand your tax bill, meaning why is your tax bill what it is? Why is the rate what it is? Where does this come from? Where is it rooted in terms of the budgeted numbers? And I'll end with this. When you learn the math, you can ask better questions and grow more engaged with the system. You'll understand how the system works, how the structure works. You can also then, by understanding, share what you know with others. That's what I'm trying to promote here on Civic Parent. I hope this is helpful. Thanks.